Most podcasters don't fail because of a lack of marketing or bad audio. The real reason is that they doubt themselves a lot, they overthink their decisions, and they're not as consistent as they would like to be. And I'm saying this because I was an indie podcaster and I have felt the angst of, will anybody like this? Does anybody care? Should I even keep doing this? And I'm so glad I didn't let that fear win, because if I had, I never would have gone on to make shows like Where Should We Begin and This Is Dating and Together Apart, and a whole bunch of other shows for brands like the New York Times, TED, and the Gates Foundation. I'm Hiwete Gaetana. I am a podcast producer and the creator of the Emerging Voices Podcasting Accelerator. In this video, I'm going to share with you the 4 core soft skills that you need to become a successful podcaster. Let's get into it. Okay, so there's a gap between where you are right now and becoming the successful podcaster that you'd like to be. And that gap needs a bridge. That bridge, in my mind, I call creative resilience. And creative resilience is made up of 4 core skills that everybody needs if they are going to successfully create something and sustain it for the long run. The very first skill of creative resilience is playful experimentation. Now, you know you're in playful experimentation if you are having fun with the creative process, if you feel like you are in flow, meaning you find the work you're doing is stretching you a bit, but it is not stressing you. And if the opposite is true, if you notice that you are stressed when you're creating, if you notice that this feels like a pass-fail situation, then it's very likely you are not in your playful experimentation skill set. To develop this skill, the thing I'd ask myself is, if there was no pressure to succeed, how would I approach this project? What this does is it increases your adaptability, your persistence, and just the capacity that your brain has to learn, because it's not in a stressed out state. The second creative resilience skill is emotional regulation. Now, if you have tried starting your podcast, you know that your imposter syndrome might get triggered, your anxiety might get triggered, or maybe even a sense of self-doubt that none of this is worth doing. Let's say, for example, you sit down to write your very first podcast episode, which, by the way, we have a video on how to write your first script, so you should watch that if you haven't. But when you sit down to write the episode, suddenly you're wondering, I wonder who emailed me, or I kind of want to go on TikTok right now. And usually we just chuck that up to us being really bad procrastinators. But the truth is, behind that procrastination, there is a discomfort that we're avoiding. We're avoiding the discomfort of sitting and doing something that we are not yet good at. And often that discomfort holds a bunch of stories like, I'm not good enough, who cares about this, what if I fail, etc. And if you felt this or you're feeling this right now, know that you are not alone. I have felt this. So many of my students in the Emerging Voices Podcasting Accelerator have felt this, and I promise you, you can work through this. So I recommend you work through this by questioning your thoughts. As an example, if you're saying nobody cares about this, the question is it true that nobody will care about what I have to say? And the logical, honest answer is not everybody will care about what you have to say, but there are definitely people who will resonate with your message or the questions that you are asking. So that question is inherently just not a good one, so you could just throw it away. Another question that might come up is this even good enough? And the truth is, the quality of what you're creating at first might not be that good because you are a beginner, and that is just a fact. When you're starting something, it's not going to be as good as when you're better at it, like duh. Either way, you are not going to let your emotions get in the way of you consistently creating. You're going to expand your capacity to sit with uncomfortable emotions. Which brings us to the third skill of creative resilience, which is meaning making. Now, anytime you start a creative project, at some point, you're gonna get to a place where you wonder, is this even worth it? And the truth is, the only reason to keep going is gonna be the reason or the meaning that you give to the project that you are working on. Another way of saying this is you need to find your why behind why you're doing what you're doing. My only qualm with that is that sometimes when we talk about finding your why, most people come up with a very noble reason for why they're creating what they're creating. And the truth is that you also need to get really clear on your most honest, most selfish reason for doing what you're doing, okay? And I'm telling you this because as an independent podcaster, I was so inconsistent for so long until I realized, hey, it's okay that a big part of why I want to do this is because I want to learn how to develop my voice. And I want to speak on stages eventually. I want to build a personal brand. But I didn't admit that to myself or to anyone else, which, to be honest, you don't need to tell anyone else. But I didn't admit that to myself, which kept me inconsistent because I was like, oh, nobody listened to the last 2 episodes, so why am I even doing this? And the truth is, there were so many other reasons to do it outside of just wanting other people's approval or other people's engagement with what we create. So if you're struggling to get motivated, ask yourself these questions. What personal significance does this podcast hold for me? How does it connect to my larger vision for my life or my work? And if I truly owned my desire to create, what would that look like? Meaning making is about choosing a purpose that genuinely fuels you. It doesn't have to be noble, it doesn't have to be polished, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be very true to you. Finally, we have the 4th skill of creative resilience, which is community building. I know it can seem really appealing to create something in your little studio, in your little apartment, in your little home, and then share it with the world and have the world be super impressed with it. But I really want to encourage you not to do that. I think this is actually one of the biggest mistakes that most podcasters make. I know this because I made the mistake myself. I didn't understand until I became a professional producer that nobody who successfully creates a show makes it entirely on their own. Okay? As professional producers, actually, we have something called a table read where you would edit your episode and then you would bring the team together and you would read your narrated lines in between the clips of audio and then get the team's feedback and go back and then you work on your episode. The idea behind this is that improvement comes through collaboration. So I really want to encourage you to embrace that mindset. And of course, when you're working on your own, like when you're an independent producer, you don't have a team to lean on, but there are a few ways that you can build this for yourself. The first and the lowest lift is to find an accountability buddy. So this can just be a friend, a cousin, a parent, somebody in your world who you can, at the very least, just check in with. Let them know, hey, I'm gonna make episode 1 next week. Please check in with me and hold me accountable. The higher level of that is to have some sort of peer group. So this is either one person or multiple people who you come together with and you can actually share your ideas with them and get their feedback and then go back, implement, work on whatever you've committed to working on, and then share the new version of what you're creating with them. The whole point in this is creating and iterating, which is a core thing that I teach everybody in Emerging Voices. Like, you are not trying to create one perfect thing with one shot. You are just trying to create something and iterate based on the feedback that you get or on the feedback that you can give yourself. Because as you get better, you'll get better at understanding your taste and then making changes to tweak the product so it matches your taste. And finally, we have mentor and expert-led communities. So this is a space where you have an expert or a mentor who knows about podcasting, and then you have a community of people who are creating their own podcasts. What this does is it already builds in the peer accountability and the feedback that you get from people in your cohort, but then you also get the knowledge that comes with working with a mentor or an expert. An example of this is the Emerging Voices Podcasting Accelerator, which I run. And it's been one of the most fulfilling things that I've ever done because I get to share my knowledge with people and I get to create a container for people where they get accountability, peer co-working, feedback, etc. If you're interested in Emerging Voices, I encourage you to book a discovery call. The program is invite only, but you get invited after scheduling your discovery call. If this video resonated with you, here's what to do next. Drop a comment letting me know which of these skills you'd like to develop further. And if you'd like to learn more, download your 10-step guide to launching your podcast. It'll walk you through every single step that you need to launch your show. I will see you in the next video.